Hey y'all, welcome to Friday Night Live, inspired by Colette Elizabeth, and I have linked her channel in the description. But yeah, this is Friday Night Live. How do we heal from narcissistic abuse? I know that narcissistic abuse is a hot topic, especially on YouTube, and that's actually how I found out about it. Even though I'm a social worker, right? Even though I have training in mental health, although I'm not a licensed social worker. I do have a little bit of training in mental health, but nowhere in my social work education was narcissistic abuse mentioned. And it was only through researching on my own, discovering on YouTube. Dr. Ramani's channel has been instrumental, and I will actually link that right here. That is the private chat. That's why it's not going to. Okay. I'll have to come back and do that and link that in the description. But if you haven't had a chance to check out Dr. Ramani's channel on YouTube, the sole purpose of her channel is to educate people about narcissistic abuse because it is so rampant in the society we live in. We do live in a society that experienced colonization, that experienced enslavement, and the remnants of that, I think, are very present in the prevalence of narcissistic abuse and how we experience it, how we experience people trying to control us all the time, trying to manipulate us, confuse us, devalue us. These are all things that are informed by the larger things at play, like colonization, enslavement, which we're still experiencing the effects of today. So I did want to walk through just the 4 basic steps of narcissistic abuse, and also would definitely invite y'all to share in the comments if you have experienced narcissistic abuse and any tactics that you use to heal from it, because I would love to see that. I want this to be kind of interactive. Hey, just talking to you. Yes, Marissa, MNT the artist. Yes. Hello. Thank you. Yes, I found where to put the channel that I watch all the time, Dr. Ramani, and I was actually a part of her healing program, kind of walking through the different phases of narcissistic abuse and also the different aspects of healing, because you have to heal from so much when someone has devalued you and discarded you. It makes you feel like you're nothing sometimes. So you have to rebuild yourself from where you are. So the impact of narcissistic abuse is not small. It is very real, and especially in the workplace, just having listened to Black women share their stories over the past year plus on Dr. Kamani's channel, on Colette Elizabeth's channel, hearing how closely it aligns, because it really is narcissistic abuse in the workplace. When we talk about from pet to threat, which is a phenomenon that Black women experience in the workplace, coined by Dr. Keisha Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps, and Dr. Juanita Johnson Bailey, this fits right in line with the pattern of narcissistic abuse. We're brought in, we're idealized, we're praised. So that's kind of the love bombing stage of narcissistic abuse. Then all of a sudden we begin to become devalued. So it'll just be little nitpicky things here and there, things that we had been doing before that had been praised. All of a sudden, people have an issue with them. And this is often brought on by the amount of attention that we're getting because of the amazing job that we're doing and the amazing qualities that we have. It makes some folks uncomfortable because they're insecure. And so what they do in that instance, instead of self-reflecting and being like, this is making me insecure, I need to work this inside myself and sit with this, they decide to devalue us to prop themselves up. And that is narcissistic abuse, right? Someone who is deeply insecure, someone who may have experienced trauma, although I don't really have a lot of empathy for people who enact these types of behaviors, will take that pain out, take that hurt out, the pain of insecurity, take it out on people who have done absolutely nothing. And if you are an empath like me, if you are a highly sensitive person, these tactics can really cut deep. They can really make you start to question yourself. Like, what am I doing? What role am I playing in this? And the thing is, with narcissistic abuse, you're not doing anything, which is actually kind of confusing. Because typically, if someone's treating us a certain type of way, we can kind of reflect and be like, what did I do to cause this? But with narcissistic abuse, how it functions, it is their issue. It is their insecurity. You are not doing anything. And the work of healing, I think, going along with the title of this video, is really recognizing that it was nothing that you did. You couldn't have done anything different. You couldn't have said something a little different. You couldn't have not spoken up. No matter what you were going to do, it was going to trigger their insecurity because it's their issue. So it's not your fault. I always want to emphasize that in order to heal, it's kind of removing that self-blame, shedding that and realizing that it was nothing that I did. It was all about them. So the 4 stages of narcissistic abuse are idealization. So this is love bombing. This is, you're so great. You're so perfect. I love everything about you. Thank you for contributing to the workplace like you do. Thank you for bringing these skills in. Like, what would we do without you? So this is, okay, okay. Keep an eye out for that. But yes, yeah, this is a love bombing stage. This is people telling us we're so great, thanking us for what we bring in the workplace, if it is in the workplace setting, thanking us for everything that we contribute, really propping our self-esteem up. And then we get into the devaluation phase. So after we've received all of this praise for everything that we bring, who we are, then it moves into devaluation, which is where a lot of the confusion starts. Hey, Dark Nate. Yes. Hey, our journey to freedom. Hey. Yes, I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, so then we move into the devaluation stage. So this is when everything that was so amazing about you, now people are starting, or the person who is narcissistic is now starting to say, now, you didn't really do that well. Now, you're not that great. You're not that amazing. They start to nitpick at your work if you are in a toxic job. Yes. They start to nitpick. They start to find faults with things they didn't find fault with before. They start to make it seem like you don't know what you're doing. When all of a sudden in the idealization stage, like back in that stage, they were all about you. They were celebrating you. And now they're devaluing you. That's the confusing aspect of narcissistic abuse. And that's how they maintain their control. Because we're trying to constantly figure out, what did I do? How did I go from here to here in your eyes? What happened? It must have been something that I did. And like I said, especially as empaths, as highly sensitive people, we are attuned to switches in people's emotions more than other people. So we really want to figure out, why is this happening to me? Why are they treating me like this? That's where the confusion comes in. And maybe you'll start to experience some symptoms of depression, right? Because you're confused, because you don't know what's happening. And this person is telling you that something is wrong with you and nitpicking, when before they loved everything you did. So you're going to think that it's something wrong with you, but it's not. It's them. They're insecure. They saw how much you shine. They saw how much you contributed. They saw how great you are and how brilliant you are, and that triggers their insecurity. So they have to move to devaluation to make you think that something is wrong with you when there was nothing ever wrong with you. Part of the healing is recognizing that it's their problem. It's always been their problem. And that's why you have to distance yourself from these types of people as soon as you start to recognize a pattern. And that is, I think, one of the benefits of seeing narcissistic abuse so widely spoken about now, is that the pattern is more out in the open. We know that abusers, once we are able to nail down their pattern and see their pattern of behavior, because they don't do anything new, then we can recognize what's going to come next and remove the thought that it's anything that we're doing from our minds. They're going through their narcissistic abuse cycle. We don't have any blame in that. So it's important to recognize the pattern so you can be prepared for what may come next and eventually exit. Because that's the thing about these types of relationships, they do not improve. Someone who is this deeply insecure is not going to all of a sudden not be insecure anymore and start treating you as you should be treated. They will continue to devalue you. And we're going to get to the next phase in a second, discard. They'll continue to mistreat you. And you will be trapped in a cycle of narcissistic abuse until you exit. So that's important to recognize too. Dark Nate says, yes, very similar to dudes who do the whole ghosting thing to women they're talking to. Dudes admit all the time they intentionally ghost women and avoid complimenting women to humble women. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the whole thing with the overlaps, narcissistic abuse, the patriarchy, white supremacy. It's real. Okay, the next phase of narcissism, narcissistic abuse, discard. So after they devalue you, after they tell you that you're doing things wrong, after they say that you're so stupid, why did you say that? Knowing it's the same thing that you said in the first stage of idealization and they were all about it and they were all celebrating you. Now they're devaluing you and now they're discarding you. Now they're saying, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. In the workplace situation, something I've experienced, you might be left out off of meetings that you're supposed to be a part of. Because they have devalued you. Now they're discarding you because it's all about them. They're insecure with your presence. And that has nothing to do with you. But they will discard you. They will make you feel like they don't want anything to do with you. You just need to stay over there. They isolate you. In the workplace, this is a tactic I see often. Yeah. The discard phase is the really painful phase. If you were experiencing those initial symptoms of depression in the devaluation stage, once you move to the discard phase, that's when they can get more severe. Because this person who you thought loved you so much, valued you so much in the initial stage, now they're discarding you. Now they don't want anything to do with you. And so we internalize that as something being wrong with us when it was never anything wrong with us. So if you are experiencing symptoms of depression and you recognize that you're in the discard phase, it's important to kind of zoom out and realize that you're in a cycle of narcissistic abuse. And it's this person that you're dealing with that is actually bringing this on. It has nothing to do with you. Okay. And the last phase, hoovering. So after we've been through all the idealization, devaluation, discarding, now we're back to hoovering. Now they want to suck you back in because you've gotten to a point where they feel like your light's a little bit more dim and they can deal with you a little bit, but they still want to have that control over you. So they want to hoover you back in and take you all back through the cycle. And each time you go through the cycle, your self-esteem is a little bit more affected. Your self-confidence is a little bit more shattered. And that's real. That's very real. So the hoovering, it's very, I will say for empaths, again, we want, and people pleasers, right? People pleasing is often a trauma response from childhood. So as people pleasers, we want people to like us a lot. And this stems from often an abandonment wound in childhood, kind of going to like the more social worky aspect of it. Yeah. So that is the cycle of narcissistic abuse. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little distracted by some folks in the comments. But yes, that is a cycle. And it's important to be aware of that. It's important to realize once you bring awareness to something like being a people pleaser, attaching or linking that to what you may have experienced in childhood, realizing that you may be more susceptible to things like hoovering, to someone who you know is causing you harm, trying to rope you back in, and you feeling like, I have to go because it will make them upset if I don't. That may be a wound from childhood that's important to bring awareness to, because at the end of the day, if you're being harmed, you don't need to be in that situation. You don't need to be in that environment. And how they feel is of no importance if you are being harmed. It really has to be kind of a put the focus back on yourself. Put the center back on yourself, because you deserve to be well, and you deserve to be loved, valued, and cherished in every relationship that you're in. If it's work, if it's home, family, personal relationships, you deserve to be valued. And anyone who is sitting there nitpicking you, undervaluing you, telling you that you're making mistakes, pointing them out all the time, you deserve so much better than that. You do. So yeah, I'm just kind of going through the stages of narcissistic abuse, trying to bring more awareness to this on this channel, especially in the workplace, talking about toxic jobs. It is very similar because it is narcissistic abuse in the workplace often. We are often, again, brought in for our talents, our skills. We know Black women are the most educated group of people in the US. We're brought in for all of these credentials, skills that we have, and then it's very confusing when we are devalued for those same skills that we were brought in for. And it leads us to internalize a lot of the harm that's being done, someone else's insecurity that they're putting onto us that has nothing to do with us. We internalize that as something is wrong with us when nothing was ever wrong with us. And part of the healing process is really reclaiming your reality, I think. So it's confusing, narcissistic abuse, right? We don't know what someone is going to do, what mood they're in from day to day, if they're going to be devaluing us, discarding us, or hoovering us back into the cycle because they need more narcissistic supply. So it's reclaiming your reality of what is this person doing? How is it affecting me? It's keeping a record of what they have done. So this may look like writing in your journal, writing in a safe place if you're at work. After a meeting, if you can, going in a conference room, no one can hear you, taking out your phone and recording a voice note of what happened to you. What did someone say to you? Keeping a record for yourself. Because as a result of narcissistic abuse, we can often fall into self-gaslighting. They gaslight us, and then we start gaslighting ourselves about how we feel. And that gets into dangerous territory because now you're disconnected from your emotions, your body, what your body is telling you. So it's reclaiming your reality, keeping track of how someone is treating you, how you feel. And yeah, keeping track of it so you can identify which part of the cycle am I in narcissistic abuse. They follow a pattern. Abusers follow a pattern. If you can identify which stage, you know how to prepare for the next one and ultimately plan your exit. Part of the healing process, I think, is also shedding self-blame. No, you didn't deserve this treatment. No, it wasn't something that you said. It wasn't something that you did. It was their insecurity. And it's as simple as that. We live in a world where people are so insecure. And again, going back to how we even got into the world, how it looks today. The larger factors of colonization, enslavement play such a role in the level of insecurity that we see. And then we see it play out in interpersonal relationships with things like narcissistic abuse. So it's important to keep in mind, shedding that self-blame is so important. Know that blame is not yours to carry. You want to shed that blame and throw it back at the person who is causing the harm because it's their problem. Also, reawaken to your gifts. Yes. Dark Nate says, yep, I finally got past the self-blame and it's so freeing. I'm thriving so much more. Yes. That self-blame is powerful. It can have us thinking that we should be ashamed of something that happened to us instead of the perpetrator. No, that's all the perpetrator's blame. That needs to be all theirs and none of ours. We entered into this relationship with pure intentions, with the best of intentions, and they took advantage of that. So that's their fault. That's their blame to carry, not ours. And the fact that we survived it is something to celebrate and be proud of and share it with other people so that they know that they're not alone. Because a tactic of abusers, again, is to isolate us, to make it seem so scary to share our stories that we keep everything bottled inside, and it eats us alive. When we open what we have been experiencing, so many people are like, me too. I experienced that too. And that is very powerful. Yes, but reawaken to your gifts, another way to heal. A lot of times with narcissistic abuse, we forget that we have gifts because they have told us that we don't have gifts. Once we're in the devaluation stage, they tell us the things that may have attracted them to us in the beginning. Now we don't have those things anymore. Now there's a problem with those things. So it's really coming back to self-validation. What skills do I know I have that I don't have to rely on anyone else to tell me that I have? Doing a skills inventory. What things can I do? What things do I like to do? What things have people told me that I can do well in the past? That maybe this person told me I can't do well, but now since I know that it's their insecurity and it's a tactic of manipulation and emotional abuse, now I can reclaim those skills for myself and be like, no, I actually am skilled at this. I actually have a list of things I'm really good at, and that person cannot take that away from me, even though they try because they're insecure. But they can't take that away from me. It's doing a skills assessment, writing down, literally making a list of all the things that you're good at, all the things that you love to do. Those are inherent. Those are your gifts, and you deserve to take ownership of those and come back into self-validation versus seeking external validation for something, because that's fickle. External validation is fickle. Someone may like your skills one day, may, again, idealize you one day. And then once you move to the devaluation phase, they're devaluing all these skills you brought to the table. But if you have taken that power back into your hands of saying, no, I'm validating these skills for myself. I'm validating my gifts for myself. No one else is going to have the power to do that for me anymore. That is how you take your power back. Because no one can touch you. No one can try to tell you your skills are not great because you're like, no, I validate those for myself. So that's important. Recognize your gifts. And the last one I'll say is just limit contact. These relationships are a pattern. There's not going to be a new step in the pattern. Once you recognize that you've been through the full cycle, a step is not going to be added to where they recognize who you are and value you. That's not the narcissistic abuse cycle. It's coming to the radical acceptance that once you are in this cycle, it won't change. And in fact, the longer that you're in it, and the longer that you are in proximity of someone who is devaluing what you bring to the table, undermining you, leaving you off of stuff, the more your self-esteem will be affected. And so time is of the essence in these types of relationships, which is why it's important to realize that you can pivot at any time. You don't have to stay in an environment that's toxic. There are an abundance of options out there for you to go to, for you to experiment, for you to try. You don't have to have or believe in the myth of scarcity so much. And we know that scarcity has real effects. Not ever going to say that it doesn't. But when it comes to feeling like there's a scarce amount of relationships in life, we tend to cling on to ones that are harmful to us because we feel like nothing better will ever come along. That's not true. Once you begin to step into your value, that's when all the options become clear. Once you begin to step away from that person who is telling you that you're not gifted, that you're not talented, that you don't deserve what you have, once you begin to distance yourself from them, all of a sudden, all of these opportunities, all of these people who celebrate you open up. There are an abundance of people out there, opportunities, places, and you don't have to stay in one that's harming you. Again, radical acceptance is so important in this, realizing that these patterns are they stay the same, they're fixed. They're fixed patterns. Once you are aware of the cycle, you know that it doesn't change. And it's very important to recognize the longer that you stay, the more damage will be done to you. The more that you will doubt yourself, doubt your abilities, doubt what you can bring to the table. When you entered into this relationship, you had so much awareness of those gifts. And it is only through a process of someone who is deeply insecure in looking for a way to manipulate and control you and dim your light that you lost sight of those gifts. But it doesn't mean you lost sight of those gifts forever. You can always come back to it. As you distance yourself from toxic people, places, countries, you come back into who you are. And it's never too late to do that. I always want to impart that as well. So thank y'all so much for joining me on this Friday Night Live, again, inspired by Colette Elizabeth. Her channel is linked in the description. But yes, this was amazing, and I hope y'all learned a little bit about narcissistic abuse. I plan to do a few more videos about this on my channel, just because it has been so pivotal in my healing journey, recognizing things like tactics like yellow rocking, gray rocking, ways that you can deal with these situations because they are everywhere in this world that we live in. Yeah, and I hope this was helpful, y'all. Thank you so much for being in the chat. If you're watching the replay, thank you for commenting, liking, subscribing, and let me know if there are any specific topics you want me to talk about when it relates to narcissistic abuse. And I hope y'all have a great weekend. Until next time. Bye, y'all.